Error. All right, Chevre, good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 Prakim Rambam. We are concluding Hilchos Ma'acholos Asuros by learning Perek Yud Zayin, and we are starting with the help of Hashem, Hilchos Shchita Prakim Aleph and Beis. Perek Yud Zayin, if you're halting cup where we're at, what did we not speak about yet? So imagine how much did the Rambam jam-pack into the final chapter. That will be Bliyos, therefore Hagala and Libun. And the concept of taking a utensil that is used directly for food that belonged to a goy to the mikvah prior to using it, pasakum and bishul akum, all in one chapter. Perek Yud Zayin has 32 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph zok the Rambam. Kedei roshol cheres, if you have a earthenware pot, shenis bashul bo basar nevela, that in it was cooked. Basar nevela or basar shkatzim v'ramasim. In other words, that because of the heat, the ta'am of the ma'achol that is forbidden was nivla inside the walls of the pot. Now going forward, even though you mamish cleaned out the pot, on the same day, you b'chlal may not use it. As we'll see, it's not that the next day you can use it lechatchila, but if you use it on the same day, you got yourself a problem. So the rule is hatapshil asid. Now hold on, people jump. We're from a people. People right away ask, why does the Rambam make a zah statement? Why don't we say it's batul b'shishim? I mean, at the end of the day, there is a concept of batul b'shishim, and you should understand that the pots that they had then were smaller. The walls of the pots that they had then were substantially thicker, especially the bigger the pot, the thicker the wall. And therefore, it was very rare that you had a bittul b'shishim. But all of the achronim say, even b'shitas Rambam, if de facto there is bittul b'shishim, post facto, like we're going to learn if it's not bas yoima. But just on the Rambam didn't have that. In his mitzias, the contents of the pot was not 60 keneged the thickness of the walls, right? And by the way, you have to have it keneged the entire thickness of the walls because the presumption is that it's nivla all over. Then benoisen tam. Then benoisen tam. And how would you know benoisen tam? You know, like we keep on learning. The Rambam says, give it to a goy. Halacha base. And why is that? Because it's not pogum yet. Let's go back to Rambam, who emphasizes the concept that the Izer is because of hana'ah. So if the tam is nifgam, for sure, if it's not the royal lamay chalada. But even if it's nifgam, then it's after the fact, not going to be a problem. However, don't say, oy bazoi, lachatchila, just wait a day and use it. And by the way, lo'olam, why not kasher it? Because we're speaking about a klei cheres that is not kasherable. That they previously used it for their foods, bechamin. That's the very important word over here. Right? Because if it was never used bechamin, if the contents were never soaked in there for 24 hours or more, if it was never used for something that's sharp or salty, then it's not nivla. And that's even afilo shuan ba'abar, even if it was coated with lead, since the keli proper is earthenware. Therefore, and as we already learned before about the lead, fakert, it made it boileya even more, and you can never fully be piloted. But post facto, if it's not bas yoimon, now let's speak about other dinnerware, which is going to be either metal, or the Rambam speaks here about glass. So let's go. If the guy never used it at all, Brano Kalim, here the Rambam quickly introduces, he's going to go back and forth for whatever reason. Madvilim b'mei mikvam, like the v'toher that we have on Parshas Matos, let's go right back to Belias, because this was just like a side note here. However, if it was, first of all, it was never used. If it was used, but only cold, like koisois, utzalachios, cups, flasks, kitoinos, pitchers, that means our presumption is, and that's enough, that it was never used for chamin. All you need to do is to be madiachin. Madichin or madvila. Why? Because the be'en might be stuck inside the kelim. Like yoidos, large pots, and kettles, then magila and hagala, as we know what it means, as the Rambam will describe. Knows if it was used with liquid, hot liquid, is kabbalah kachpalte, then you have to put it in, submerge it in boiling hot water, and also umadbilan. You also have to have this, taking it to the mikvah, and then the hein mutarin. Now,
only used for water?
Does it? Yeah. So Yaakov is just pointing out. You can argue the was only used for water. So the presumption here, obviously, is that it was not only used for water. If it was taka only used for water, then there's nothing to be to make hagala for. Now, things that were used directly with fire. Now, I know a pot is used with fire, but you have in the pot water. Fire means a frying pan, or it would mean shvudim, spits, and grills, mamish. Then, right, kabbalah kachbalti, libun, milabnan ba'oir, or ba'ur. Then you have to burn them until they become. Libun means white, hot, and acheti nashar klipasan, until their outer surface falls off. These are things that don't happen to modern day metals. All right, the hein mutaren, and then they become permissible.
By the way, sometimes people return Amazons and you buy a new item.
Rabbi Zajac is pointing out something great. I just want to make a counter that many times you buy something today, someone used it a day or two because of the return policies. L'choira called the parish meruba parish. L'choira and ruba is not that way. Halacha dal. Keitzad magilan. Noisin yoyde k'tan l'toich yoyde gedol. The point that Rambam is going to make is that the keli that you're doing hagala to has to be completely submerged. So if you're doing hagala on a smaller keli, you already have a larger keli that are easy. That's a point has to be completely submerged. Has to boil. However, if the treifa pot is to begin with a big pot, you don't have a yet larger pot. So what you do is you put around the edge mud, dough, which means that even after the water will go over the rim, it's going to stay there for a moment. So that boiling water is going to sit over the rim. Now, kulim shenishtamesh b'hem actually irtiach, oy actually hidiach, oy actually hilben, but actually hidbil. In all of these cases, post facto, if you used it for cold, imuter, even for hot, he meant that Rambam means here if it's not a bas yoim. Now he mentioned in passing. Now we're going to focus on that. The tefillah, tefillah zu shemat bilan klei asuda, hal nilkachem en hagoyim. And only afterwards may you use them for eating and drinking. Says that Rambam eino le'inyan tuma v'tara ela midivrei seifrim. Just to know, like we had not that long ago in Hilchos issues, when the Rambam says that kinyan kesev is midivrei seifrim, kicha mistei efrein, and we already spoke out that there are some shitas b'ha Rambam that the v'toher that Chazal say is not an asmachta. Many people suggest that's not what the Rambam means. Since the limud is learned through the Chacham and part of Torah Shabbat Peh, this won't be the only time that the Rambam uses the word Divrei Soifrim. Lav Dafka, the Rambam means that it's completely midrabanan, and there are big nafkeminas ledina, whether we view Tfilas Kayim from Tumas Akum, Adoiraisa, or Ederabanan. Now there is one shita, we don't pass on that way, At Kedekach Doiraisa, that if you didn't take it to the mikvah, the food that you put in there may not be eaten. We don't follow that shita, but such a shita is actually even brought down in halach. Okay. Now, for the Remez law, again, all of this, the pashtus is that Rambam learns it's just an asmach. But again, there's a big discussion. What is really shita Rambam? When it says in Parshas Matis after the Milchamas Midyan that kol she'yava ba'esh taviru ba'esh, that would have been enough. I mean, that's the source where you learn kabbalah kachbalte. But why did the Torah have to say the words v'tohe? Kol she'yava ba'esh taviru ba'esh. What's the betah? Me pay ashmol amdo she'ena madam ela betaras me de geule goyim. Ela mi loy mi de tuma. She'ela chatuma she'en oila ela de ha'esh. And therefore, we're speaking about a whole different concept. So there's the belias, for which you have to have kabbalah kachbalte, if it was used ba'ur, taviru ba'esh. And then there's another topic, and also, it's not tumah v'tara. It's not your normal tumah v'tara. It's the fact that it was owned by goyim, you have to take it to the meim. Chol atameim, b'tfila, oila mitumasam, v'tumas meis, ba'zoah v'tfila, and ve'en sham eish klal, elol inyan gulei goyim. So no, this passage is speaking not about tumah v'tara. The fact that fire works, we're speaking about belias. Now, the key and shakasav v'tar, omru chachamim, that will be the pshat. Hoisiv loy tahara acher avirosav eish latir migulei goyim. You put it b'eish lahatira migulei goyim. After you took care of the geulei goyim, now there's another tarum, and that's the v'tohen. Halacha vav loy chiva b'tfila zu ella klei matchois shal seuda metal dinnerware, hanel kachim and hagoyim, because you own it. Aval hashoyim and hagoyim. If you borrowed it, or if he gave you a loan and you have and you're going to use it, madiach, because listen, macholes asuras, I don't care if you own it or not, you got to get rid of it. If you want to get rid of the belias, but since you don't own it, nowadays, if you go to a place and they give you something to drink in a glass cup, again, same concept. It's not yours. You can drink it. Then also, you don't have to do this type of tefillah. Only also ain't tzarich lahatnu. I want you to know, today we take it to the mikvah. That's why many people, we rarely make a bracha. It's very limited for what we have to do. There's another concept that if a yid owned it, even in partnership, you also don't have to do it. And today many companies are belongs to multinationals and you didn't have stocks in them. There's a machlokes in place for how you view it. Anyways, some groups are very limiting when they make brachas. We and Lubavitch, we make brachas more than most people think. Abol hashu and ba'avar, the moment you coated them, then harim kekli matchos utzvarach tefillah, which is really neged today. That means if you were to buy a pure klei cheres without coating, you don't have to take it to the mikvah. The reason why we take our coffee mugs to the mikvah is because they're glazed. Where are you, glazer? That's why we do it.
Single use.
Single use, you never have to take to the mikvah.
Is that what you're saying here about if it's like borrowed? It's not true.
No, he's not speaking about that. No such a thing as this luxury of America. He never foresaw to a certain degree. This Mashiach times.
Shrein Bavaz, the outside is metal.
No, Avad lead. It's outside and inside. It's all of our klei cheres. I know that here, my son made. There's a place here in Beverly where the kids make pottery. That you don't have to type. That's pure klei cheres. Okay, right. Halacha zayin. Halokeach sakin min hagoyim. If you buy a knife, so the din is malab ba'ur. Here you have an option. In other words, when you sharpen it, it rubs down the metal, and that gets rid of the bliss. You don't need to rub it down. So then, and then you can only use it for tzoynim. In other words, putting it into the karka gets rid of the shamnunius that's on it. And if you're going to use it for cold, you're good. There's little nooks in them. But you want to use it for chamin, or you want to shech with it, then you got to be malabno emashchiza kula. However, the din is, as we already quoted, that we paskin that the base hashchita is shoynein. So post facto, all you need to do is rinse out makam hashchita. And if you want to do kadei klipa, even better, even though you did not do libun or hagola on the night. Halacha 8, sakin sheshachad b'tereifon, which happens. Lo yishchad b'achi. Again, you don't have to do kashening, because we say that the beis hashchita is considered true. People that make bedikas prim, people that are into that, that is hot smoking, but not the makam hashchita. Afilu b'tzoynein is good enough, or even better. You can just be mekancha bevloy shel begadim. You can clean it with a shmata, with a garment. Halachat 9. V'yesham devar amachenim asar esim chachamim. Moving on. Va'af al pi she'ein li isuram ikar min ha'toiram. Like even if you're going to learn in the Rambam, when he's speaking about that the V'toid is taka and asmachta, but it's an asmachta, my friends, that has an emes min atoida. That's called an asmachta. Now we're moving on, as we'll see, to bishulakum, to pasakum, to paspalter, everything that Rambam will speak about, and how the chachamim took away shemenakum. That here you're considered a rebel if you continue with that because they outvoted that. There's no ikim in atoida. And most of them were not most. The Rambam says they were made to make sure that we are separated from. We don't socialize with them, because if we were to socialize with them, it might lead to intermarriage, as we tragically see in this final generation of goats. And here are these chachamim. Asru lishtais imam. You can't have a fixed place where you drink with them. The Rambam says, "Bechal can't drink with them." The very fact that you're socializing with drinking, that's not good.
Coffee?
Huh?
Coffee also?
So again, I spoke over here. What we actually say is not to go to a fixed place. Many places can say, like people go to, not to go to a same place. Because if you go to a different place, truth is the world is very big. We're living in big cities. You don't meet. But it could be, some people have their patterns. Most people are square. They go there every morning to have their coffee. Go to another place. Go to another place. You shouldn't, you don't know anyone. But also, you can't eat bread that they make. This is not because of kashrus, even if the ingredients are 1,000,000% kosher, or to have some of what they mevashel, as the Rambam will describe. Okay, no, this is not about blias. This is not about ingredients. This is pashut about. I got it. Now I got what Zajac was saying. I apologize. Okay, you guys should have spoken up. Good.
Can I ask,
Quickly, we gotta move.
about using a knife in fruit cards?
So, a knife and food cards. So, let me say like this: that what's the chashash? The chashash is that the goy over there used it for his ham sandwich. If he did that, it's the chayra. He's going to use it on your food. In the worst case scenario, the shamnunius will be smeared on 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 pieces. Afterwards, there won't be any more fats, and then you can argue that kala parush meruba parush. There is such a hetin. In larger stores, like in Ralph's and stuff like that, you can buy cut up fruits and vegetables because they won't use their knives for anything else. Fruit cards, some people are machmer. If you can bring your own and b'diya, but if you bought it, it's okay for sure. You can't say that what you took had in the chamlunius when Roy will not have. Okay, halacha yud. Zajac, I'm sorry. Now I didn't understand what you were writing. Okay.
It's sharp. Then you have different issues.
If it's sharp, I'm not going to say that it's for sure going to be treif. Can't say that so quick, because these knives are made. He has big knives. Did you see those? They're made to use kela. It's a chashash. Maybe he used it once. It's more about the shamnunius. That even if he used it for his ham sandwich, it's going to get smeared off on the next couple of pieces. You don't know which ones they are. And then when he's giving it to you, it's like when you go to the market, how do you know it's not Arla? Maybe the fruits are from Arla, but called the Parish, we rely on, right? Don't think that when you go to a kashrus agency, they rely on this the whole time. Anyways, right. Halacha. So now, Ketzat. Lo yishta adam mesiba shal goyim. V'af al pi shehu yayin mevushel she'eino nesa. Or shehaya shoysi mikelav levadim, means you're drinking your own wine. Now, you can argue, Yaakov, that here it's because there's wine. People say wine because of alcohol, if you're drinking coffee. Anyways, but if most people are Yidden, and here it's not about their level of frumkeit, because here, don't forget, anything that comes because of chasnus, if they're Yidden, you have nothing to worry about. Mutter. Don't drink their beer that they make from tomorrow and 10 again, because you're going to get close to them. Alcohol. But this is only also because you're drinking it there. If you bring the beer home, is don't have a feast. Again, Su'uda. So yeah, okay, you can argue it's not shaykh to coffee, but okay, right. These are wines that were uncommon then. Because since it's a davar she'eino matzah, it goes through all of. Yain simukan raisin wine. Raisin wine is wine. So in other words, his point is not to tell you another nuance about yain nesach, yain stam, But therefore, this concept of going to a place where they sell it and to drink it with them, or they're drinking it, is something that's us. Halacha Yud Beis. Nevertheless, as guys, you remember that whole sugya in Avodah Zarah. Here, there was a little bit of a leniency. And there's what's key, according to the Rambam, there's two steps. Number one is it's made by a baker, not made in the home. Not because of kashrus, because you get close when you have home baked. This is a business. And number two, only if you are out there in the field, and therefore there is no other option. Basada. Okay. And the loichim pas ben anachtum goy. The markaim, number one, she'ein sham nachtum Yisrael. There's no other option. There's no option. Not only, and it's basada, guys. It's very important. Not when you live in a city. Even you live in a city where there's no pas Yisrael. Has to be out there. But bread that's baked by a goy ain't shom mishum hakel sheikir hagzeda mishum chasnos, and v'im yochel pas balabatim, then eventually yavoy lisoid etzlam. And that's exactly the way it is. You know, someone told me a long time ago that the reason why Rice fired them, the fact there's a lot less into marriage, is because they were a lot more machmir in pas and bishalakum. And the way the standards of the Beis Yosef and bishalakum, the b'chal is way more chomer. So that made a big difference. Halacha Yud Gimel. Hidlik hagoyes atanu. When it comes to baking, if a goy lit a tanu, but a yid put the bread in, or the opposite, a yid lit a tanu, the ba'afa bagoy, or she hidlik hagoy, ba'afa goy. All the Jew did was at any part of the process, even though he reduced the fire, he did something negative. So that was the whole truth of Rav Moshe. If you have what's called bagels, the bagels that we had at Hong Kong, those bagels, if you toast them after, you buy them. Whether you can say that you participated in it, even though you can eat it as it is, but you like to eat it toasted. That's when we were shluchim in Hong Kong, Rabbi Groner of blessed memory said we can do that because during the week that was the only bread. It wasn't basada, but there was no other bread. It was OU, and it was commercial. So he felt that if you toast them, and these were the heterim. Let's go back to the beginning. If all you did was you threw a piece of wood into the oven, that's the way it was when I grew up in Brazil. You had the pãozinhos, that means the ingredients were kosher. Yidden was common on the way to shul. My father would stop by that place and he would light the fire. He would light, that was already but they used in the olden days, even the goy lit the fire, you threw in another piece of wood. Then on the way back from shul, you get the pas. So the most lenient is going to be by pas nachto. Now let's move on to bishul. Bishul is a lot more chomer. Guys, I want you to know that we paskin, I don't know how the Sfardim paskin, that if there was bishalakim, you do hagala. The beliefs of bishalakim is also not good. Halacha Yudal. Goy shebishal lanu, if you cook for us, either wine or milk or honey or perishon or quince. In other words, the chayoytze be'elam, what's the commonality? That they could have been consumed as they are prior to them being cooked, number one, then it's not a problem. That's heter number one. Nechel k'may shuchai. V'lo yigazru el al davar she'ena nechel k'may shuchai, which will be meat. Dog. Now, a dog, you can argue people eat fish. So the Rambam differ adds dog tafel. Take dog moliach. Other certain fishes, they can be eaten as they are raw. Look at sushi today. That makes a big difference when it comes to bishul akum. Big. Ubeitza v'yirakas. Now, in bishul magoyim etchila v'at soif. V'lo yishtat v'Yisrael ima b'bishulam hareim l'asurim mishum bishulei goyim. Halacha tezov. Amet v'amamurim heter number 2. If something that's chashuv, that is put on the table of kings, lechel b'yasapas, they eat it. Everything was eaten with bread. For example, basan ubeitza v'dogim chayitza v'hem. Abel davar sheino elo shulchan malachim lechel b'yapas kegoyin turmoisin veg that was cooked by goyim afalpi that they're not eaten, cannot be eaten when they're raw. Nevertheless, because that's not a chashuv of being. It's not a chashuv. Michael, and if a guy were to invite a yid, he wouldn't give this to a meal. You understand? That's the logic. If they were salted, or if a guy salted it, that's even a bigger chiddush. Now, and therefore, if a guy now fried them, even if the guy was the one that salted it. In other words, melicha itself is not called bishul. Just to make that clear, melicha is not called bishul. We don't say kavush kemavushal or maluach kemavushal for the bishul akum. But on the other hand, now that it's already edible enough, now that the guy made the bishul on something, you can't say that the guy did bishul mitchilas and atzayfer. The halachic bishul was not mitchilas; it was already maluach ksas. You have to call it here. But the chiddush is that even if the guy was the one that salted it, and now the guy is the one that did the cooking, you're allowed to eat it. If the guy put it on the fire, and all what he did was he stirred the pot, or the yid put it on the fire, and the guy was the one that did everything. The Rambam is even more lenient, even by bishul akum, like by pas, that even if the yid only opened up the fire. The Machaber, the Sfardim paskin, that at least the yid has to put it on the fire. It's a big difference. You have to know.
You have to flip it and stir?
No, one or the other. In other words, even the Rambam is speaking about the Jew doing something to the food itself or to the pot itself. He doesn't mention only putting on the fire. You have to know all of the kosher restaurants here in Pico, I would say Ruba de Ruba, that are the OU or they are okay. They're not following the standards of the Beis Yosef. And maybe many Sfardim are not allowed to eat there. I'm sorry for them because it's big. For them, it's not Bishul Yisrael. Because all the Yid, all the Mashgiach was, he opened lit a fire. Okay, Allah Yudzai. Dog Shemalachi Goy. Upeiroi Sheishnan. So now we're speaking about salting, smoking. Salting and smoking was not included in the Gezerah. Harei elo mutarim. Weiter. Moliach. Eino kiroseach b'Gezerah zu. And Hama'ushan is not considered mavusha. Similarly, Kloyishal Goyim, kernels of grain that were roasted by the Goyim. That was a very common food. The only thing you have left from this today is popcorn. And by the way, that's the whole machlokes, right? Moshe says you make a hadam on popcorn. Many people make a. See, they used to roast grain. Mutarim. V'lo gazru aleim again because she'ein adam azam chaveri alakaloyos halacha yudches. Beans, pulin, the peas, lentils, the chayutz behem. Sheshol kanoisam agoyim that they cooked it. Umaychanoisam asur mishuli goyim. Where only b'makim she'oilin ala shulchan malach b'shum parperes. Only if people use it as a relish, as a side dish. You can say, and if they don't use it, you can eat it, but they cooked it in their pots. There's another issue, and you have to be mindful of two issues over here. Donuts, that they fried in oil, in additional to, he's calling donuts bishulakum because it's cooked. You have two issues. Halacha yutes. Goy shebishul lenis chaval nabishul lenis amuter keitzad. Goy sheitzes or ba'agam. If you lit a fire in the swamp, he did it. Kedei lahavet hechatzid. It was an overgrowth. They didn't have lawnmowers. That was the way you solved it. Here you do is you get arrested. And now it turned out that all of the grasshoppers got roasted. Delicious. Harei lemutarin. I do goy lit a fire because his kavanah was not to roast grasshoppers. Even in places where the grasshoppers are elam shulchan malachim. Oh, tzemach came for the grasshoppers. The mamish delicious. We don't know what we're missing out over here. Now we'll all become Yemenites or those who have a Musayda. For sure, Mashiach will come. We'll go back to eating them if you want. A person has an animal scent. They want to get rid of the hair. Flecken in Yiddish. The flecken, the avoida was a big avoida. And here, one way is just to singe it. And now you roasted the delicious dangling pieces of flesh with the ears. From the animal, a machaya. But the guy did it, not a problem. Because his kavanah was not to give you a chbeis as a meichel. Halacha chaf. Dates that were cooked by goyim. That means they were edible. That's the rule. Since they were edible without the cooking, but if they were bitter, right, and you now have to cook them to make them edible, asurim. The Muzayin at Tzadik, Chevre. All right. Tei Tzadik. Halacha Chaf Aleph. Let's go. We got to move. Kali Shaladoshim. Now, guys, if you remember in the Chazal, shtisa, that's the shtisa that the Gemara speaks about. It's roasted lentils that they did in water. They roasted it and then they kneaded it in water. That's considered something chashuv. Because they didn't make shetisa with chitim and so'irim. Anything that was not a normal food, like we had the yayin, certain wines concerning not drinking with the goyim, here also by bishul. Shemen shel goyim. Here we go. This was one of the examples of how they made a nimnu v'gamru shemen akum is not allowed to be consumed. It was too difficult for the people to keep it. They made another convening of the Sanhedrin and they outruled it. They took away that gezerah. Today, the ingredients have to be kosher, guys. Make no mistake. If you don't have a good hechsher on oil, it could be this terrible non-kosher stuff in there. But as far as the concept of bishul akum, pas akum, right, yayin akum, chalav akum, not by shemen anymore. Shemen shall go muter. And whoever wants to be machon and mishum, that's called very sinful. He's rebelling against the basin. It's one thing to be machmed, but if the Sanhedrin discussed it and they were mated it, you cannot be machmed. Right? Number one, it no longer bishul goyim. Because Chazal took away the gzeira on oil. So since you can eat it when it's raw, people use it when it's raw. Bishul I giuli goyim. So here's the rule: that if they would have used a pot that would have had in it a tam of a meichel that's asur, that ruins oil. That's called moisam tam levgam. And post facto, it's okay. The pnei shebasa the poigam as Hashem masrichoy. And similarly, Allah chav gimel v'chein devashel goyim shenis bashel, and they made from it a candy. You're allowed to have it. You can have the dvash when it's raw. Maybe the kalim had in it beliois asurais, loisam tam levgam in honey. Halacha chav dalid kuspan shel goyim date dregs shulchan muchamav that were heated in hot water. Baby, they are mutter. Why here also? These are all types of foods that bepnei loisam tam levgamu v'chein kavashim. Pickled foods, which will be problematic from goyim. Oy, zeisim akavushim, v'chagovim akavushim. Imagine how it worked then. You didn't even need hashgacha. You would buy pickled grasshoppers from goyim. But if you're in a place where they also sprinkle wine, then you can't have it because of the yain nesach, yain stamp. Even if they only sprinkle in it vinegar. Even chomet sheichar, if they're going to be asur, why chomet sheichar? Halacha chafei, asur chomet sheichar shel goyim, because they might put in it also some dregs of wine, and therefore, if you buy it from the storage place where you know all is chomet sheichar, there wasn't an opportunity for anyone to add something to it, which might be wine. Then takamutet, hamurias, goyish fish brine. If they would add wine, asur. However, if wine was more expensive than the yellow gook, then it's mutter, because when people add, they only add. That was the whole reason why many people didn't have sugar, even today, until up today, because they would add flour in the sugar. It's because flour was cheaper than the sugar. If flour is more expensive than sugar, then Pesach. No one would add something if what they're adding is more expensive than the product. But you ain't other out of hayakar b'zel. No one, if you live in a place where the non-kosher is more expensive, there's no chashash. Sherei mafsid. Aval ma'arav hazil b'yakar kadei lihi staker. Now, final few halachas. Halacha chav zayin. Cotton she'achal echad me'machalas asuris. Minors, or if a cotton is doing a malacha b'Shabbos. So first of all, the commandment is not to stop him because he's not a bardas. But that's also only if he's doing it on his own. But the light is off, and a person picks up his kid on Shabbos and they put him near the switch. That's b'yadayim. That may not be done. If he does it, you don't have to stop him. Even though it's better to stop him, but you're not mechuyev to stop him. Never do it b'yadayim. Halacha chavches. Now that we made this differentiation between biyadayim, no, but passively, if he's doing it on his own, you don't have to stop him. Nevertheless, there's a mitzvah al aviv liger bayulahafrisha. Now, if the Rambam is making a chiluk between Bezdin and the father, could be, but in other words, you're not obligated, but inspired. That's the way you have to teach these words for people that come from this century. Saying today you shout at a kid, that's not the way you'll be mechayechem. That's no chinuch al pi darkei. Halacha chavtes. Now nudin. There's other isur that Chazal made on all types of foods and drinks. That most people are revolted like macholis umashkin that got mixed in it, vomit, feces, anything that has a bad smell. The Chazal asked for you to eat it. You can argue why did you even need that? They're asking it. Don't eat in utensils that are hartsoyim, that are filthy. Imagine. They didn't have kalim then. Sometimes they had no option. Or certain glass utensils that was used for bloodletting or other types of medicinal activities, which they used to be filled with bodily liquids, and now you just wash them out. It's disgusting. And let's go into halacha lamed. The Chachamim forbade us to eat with dirty hands or on top of kelim that are pasha dirty. You can argue, hold on. It says in the Torah, that's a classical lapsha b'chlolis. Like in all of midorais, it includes so many things, but there's makas mardus. Included in alta shaksu is for a person to delay relieving oneself, whether it is gedolim or ketanim. How many stories we had in the Gemara that these big amiroim, when they taught to thousands of people, that in the middle of a class, they would relieve themselves by the talmidim around them would stand up, they would make a circle, they would face the other direction. But it's very important not to hold oneself in. And you should know that Yasser al Choloim Reim Shiyam al Atzmai is Chai ben Nafshay. Aside of violating, it makes a person ill, and the person will get sick, and he's at fault. A person that's God made us in a way that we can train our body to relieve itself at specific times. That's most people work that way. Because either if you don't train your body, then you're gonna have to go to the bathroom at 11 a.m. Then they have no bathrooms; they would have to go away, or they won't be able to go away, so they're gonna hold themselves in, and then they'll be mishaket snafshoy. Halacha lamed beis, the final halacha chavre siyum in macholas asuris. B'chol hanizim b'dvarim elu maybe kedusha v'tahara yisayid al nafshe. B'choyde b'dvarim elu is referring only to what we began in halacha chavtes. And mamarek nafshe l'shem hakadosh baruch hu. As it says in Pasha Shemini, the Torah also wrote at the end of the Torah writes about kashrus many times, but a lot of it is in Shemini. Why? Because ki kadosh ani, and we have a shtickle of the Oibishter in us. So if God is holy, therefore we are holy, and we have to express it also by adding this level of pashit, even physical cleanliness and brich rachmana. Blessed is the merciful one that gave us the merit to be able to conclude the Rambam's Macholis Asurais, and with tremendous simcha, we are going right from the Siyum to the Haskalah. We are beginning with Hilchos Shchita. People that are redheads, we have a lot of redheads here in the chat, even though some of the redheads became white, but the cleanness is still there. And you should know that it's Taka Sugula to get rid of a lot of inner excess energy that's not excess, is to not only to shech, to learn about Shchita. There's something to it. Hilchos Shchita, my friends, Yesh B'Chlala says that Rambam Chamesh Mitzvahs. This is also the final group of halachas in Sefer Kedusha. And as we said in the beginning, that Kedusha is two steps. Kedusha first of all means to separate yourself. That was Bias Asuris, Machalas Asuris. But after a person, only after the person is Oisig Ba'avodas Hiskafya, Nish, not, you're mafresh yourself, then you're removed. Once you are removed, you have the koyach to elevate, to make something that was not good. And that's what Shchita does. Shchita is the power that God gave us to take something that's not kosher and to make it kosher. That's the ultimate kavan of Dira B'Tachtonim. So yesh b'chol no chamesh mitzvahs, sholish mitzvahs asay, ushtay mitzvahs loisase v'zeu praten aleph chevra freilach lishchoit, and then to eat. It's a mitzvah. Shecht and eat. Halacha beis. Shaloi yishchet oisev es b'nei b'yem echad, as will be defined. Halacha gimel lechasois dam, either chaya or oif, and not, there's no mitzvah to do so by a behema. Halacha daled, not to take ha'em alabanim. Number 5, if a person did so, they were open on the lav, then they have a lav shenitek lasei. If he already took the mother on the badim, albeit all of these mitzvahs will be in the following chapters. Perek Aleph has 29 halachas. Perek Aleph is going to speak about mamish, the basics of shchitas, the location of the shchita, the what, the who, the when, the where. We're going to learn about some things that are mafsid, the shchita, even though that's going to really be in Perek Gimel, the 5 halachas. We'll get to that and not in the first chapter. We're going to learn about the Bedikas Hasakin and much more. Let's begin with Halacha Aleph. Says that Rambam mitzvahs asay, there's a positive commandment, unlike, for example, Basar B'chalav that we said that Midoiraisa, it's only about Behema, only Midrabanan Chai V'oif. No, Shchita Midoiraisa is for all of these 3 categories, not fish, not grasshoppers, but yes, for these 3. Guys, Hashgacha Pratis, we're learning this in Mamash already. Erev Chodesh Elul Tavshan Pei Beis. This week is Parshas Re'ei. The pasuk is in the A where it says V'zavachta mi bekarcha umitzoincha. Now, by the way, this only is behema, right? Bakar and soin is cattle. Cattle is a shoyin metapara. The tzoin always means both shepsalach and gotalach. Okay, 1 second, and let's go on. It says by a bachar balmum ach kasher ya'achal esatzri ve'eso ayil kei toichlenu. So the fact that the Torah compares a behema by the dinim over there to what? To the deer and the gazelle, which are chayes. Hold on. That only makes the hekesh between chayes and behemoths. How do you know that midoraisa also for birds? Because since it says asher yotzud, say chaya. Listen together. Oy oy. I know it's in the context of kisoi hadam. Doesn't matter. The Plato juxtaposes. So look how you go from one behema to chaya to oif. Like, for example, sometimes we don't do these doubles by kachim. But here we're not learning about the shchita. The Rambam is saying not shvichas dam for the mitzvah of kisoy hadam. No. The spilling of the blood means the way you kill the animal. You got to shecht it the same way. Okay, that's how you see that shchita midoiraisa is for all 3 types. Behema, chaya, v'oif. Allah beis. The hilchah shchita b'kolam achasi. Even though we're going to see kula achas, yes and no. Like just for example, by behema you have to shecht roi both of the simanim. By an oif you have to shecht b'diavad roi echad. Doesn't matter. It's still considered one din. Lefika chashaycha behema oichai oif. All 3. You make a bracha shekidishonu b'mitzvaysa v'tzivanu ala shkita deim loy beirach. Like the klal in any birchais mitzvahs, a person put on tefillin, they forgot to make the bracha. You get the mitzvah. Doesn't ruin the meat. You just miss the mitzvah of making a bracha prior to the mitzvah, which is birchas mitzvahs is midrabanan. Even though by birchas haTorah you have the achloikas, maybe the oraisa, but other than that, for sure midrabanan. For also lechol min hashchuta, another din. It's interesting again how the Rambam cut up the halachas. You cannot eat from an animal that was slaughtered as long as the animal is still miparkeses. It's still moving about. Not because of Eivir Menachai. It's asun midoiraisa for another reason, as the Rambam says. He's violating the law. Another law shabachlolos. It says leisoichlu al adam. Leisoichlu al adam means so many things, right? It means don't eat before you daven. But that's why you're not going to be chayv balkis, because it's a law shabachlolos. But included leisoichlu al adam means that even though for a yid, not for a goy, only for a Jew, after the shechita, it's no longer Eivir Menachai, as long as the animal is still alive. How do you know that the animal is moving around? You can't eat it. And the Eino Loika. However, since it's not because of Eivir Menachai, imagine a person goes, God forbid, and they rip off a limb of a living animal. They did it. And then they killed the animal. Or then they shechted the animal. That limb is not kosher. You ripped it off a living animal. This halacha changes. So if a yid takes a piece of meat off the animal right after shechita, even though the animal is still mirpacheses, he's not allowed to eat it because leisechlu al adam. But after the animal passes away, then it becomes mutter. And you can mocha yafa yafa manicha yafa yafa. That's why we learned that in the previous segment. It's funny that Rambam speaks about melicha kedei hiluchmil. I want you to know that at Shaykh, if you shecht an animal without cutting the veridin, which we'll learn soon about, which you don't have to cut the veins, then the animal can live. I think Gemara says 24 hours after shechita, it can live for a long time. Okay, halacha gimel. That atkan behema chai va'oif. See, beautiful. The Rambam said it in the beginning always. The chap halacha gimel dagim v'chagavim. Right? Ein tzrichem shchita. Not even midrabanan. Nothing. The ela asifasan ki hamateres. Gathering them, guys. Gathering them doesn't have to mean that you gathered them when they were alive. That's why no matter how it came into your mouth, they are now gathered, as the Rambam says. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu was telling the Eibishter, however you understand Moshe Rabbeinu's statement to the Eibishter, but here he juxtaposed, the pshat is he's telling Hashem, no matter how much we'll give them, they'll never be happy. But he put together shchitas tzoinu bakar and gathering of fish, gavaldik. So here you see, asifas dakim kashchitas bakar v'tzoin. How do you know that the same is for Chagavim? Because by Chagavim it says, and here we're talking not quoting a pasuk from the Torah Shabbat Peh, from Chamisha Chum Shatayra, we're quoting here a pasuk from Nach. Oisef hechasul. So the same word oisef basifa lavada, right? It's like an emes. So you see from me, we don't learn dinim. Ein navi d'shoy lechadash v'adavar ma'ata, but certain things were nisgala ali de'anaviyim. Ye'asef, and ye'asef in shchita. Lefikach, and therefore says the Rambam, if the fish died, they are mutanim. He wants to make it very clear because how are you eating it? Because you took it out of the water. They died in the water. It doesn't say that you're gathering them has to take their life. When you gather them, they become mutar. It's anything that you eat is gathered. Another din is also by fish umutar la'achlan chayim.
Even like a grasshopper flies into your mouth.
Even if a grasshopper, and especially if it was singed on that fire we learned in the last chapter, so it got a bissel, delicious. I think you have to make a bracha.
You would call it a sifa in your mouth.
I think so. Yeah. Okay. Halacha dalat. Zvicha zu hamura batoyre stam. So like we just quoted the pasuk in Ba'aloisman. Moshe Rabbeinu says hatzoin v'habakar yishachet. Or we have in this week's parsha, kasher tzivisicha, that will be in the main pasuk in the 8. That's I think one of the main psukim that we have in Torah Shabbat Peh, where you see that there's a Torah in Torah Shabbat Chsav, we know there's a Torah Shabbat Peh. Hashem is writing the words in the Chumash and the A, Shech, the way I commanded you. Nowhere is it written any remes to how to Shech. B'chlal. Is that ayah that God told Moshe things that are not written in the Torah? And it's not there. It has to be explained. Mamish, all the big questions. What part of the animal? What's the shir of shchita? What utensil can you use to shech? What time can you shech? How do you shech? The ketzat shechtin, and then umahim, the negative. What are the dvanim that will disqualify the shchita? Who can be a shechet? All of that has to be clarified. Now we're quoting again from our parshas today. How? Kasher tzivisicha, the way I told you, and then eat it b'sha'arecha. Shekol hadvarim ha'elu al peh tziva behem Moshe Rabbeinu k'shar Torah Shabbat Peh, which is called generally mitzvah, as the Rambam explained in the Hagdama. He doesn't write in the beginning means in the Hagdama. He wanted you to learn the Hagdama. That's when the Rambam when the Rebbe made the Chalukas Rambam, he daf concluded the Hagdama. And what did the Rambam write in the Hagdama? Torah or mitzvah. The Rambam teaches Torah means Torah Shabbat Sav. Mitzvah means Perusha. Perusha means Torah Shabbat Peh. Halacha 5. Makem hashchita menachai hu hatzavar. Chol hatzavar kashal l'shchita. Now, when he says kol hatzavar, very nice. How do you define the neck? All the neck. What's the neck? So let's go. The two simanim that we will constantly be focusing on will be the veshet and the kana. The veshet in English is called the esophagus. It's a big fancy word for me. The esophagus is where the food goes through. The esophagus is very soft. And the kana, which is the windpipe, is like a tziploidin. It's harder. That's where the air goes through. And as we'll see, by a behema, chaya, l'chatchila, we should shech both of the simanim. Even by a oif, l'chatchila, shech both of the simanim. So we have to define the makam atzavar both for the veshet and for the kana. Now, we're not shechting it from the inside out. But the tzavar keneged, the highest, higher than that is not good. The lowest, lower than that is not good. That's what we're going to go to. When it comes to the area of the veshet, of the esophagus, the highest part, higher you cannot. Mitchila samakim kisha shechoitchin oisam iskabels, that when you cut it, it begins to contract. That only happens from a very high place up. In the Makim Matzaber, when you cut it, nothing. It's like you're cutting through anything, that it doesn't change, it doesn't contract. That's the top part. And what's the lowest part of the Veshet? Ad Makim Sheyasi'ir. If you were to be looking inside the Veshet, I hope we do this in LO3, look inside the Veshet. Once it starts to go into the stomach, little hedalach grow out. Not only do little hairs grow out, but also there's little indentations, little lechalach inside the inner membrane. That's not good anymore. That's already not the Veshet. Ad Makim Sheyasi'ir. And in the place of the hair, the Yaschaliyah is perotzim, just like Hashem made the inside wall of the stomach. You have these little holes. I'm not talking about only the base hakaisis. You have to push it, see it. Unlike the inside of the is smooth. The inside of the Veshet is smooth. Now, Allah above. Right above the place where you cut it, it already begins to contract. It's called the Tar Beitz HaVeshet. Or Lamatim, which is called the Tchilas B'nei Ma'ayin. In both of these cases, if that's where you cut into the Veshet, Shchitasa is completely invalidated. Now, Shir Tabatz HaVeshet, She'en Roi L'Shchita L'mayla, by Be'emen Achayam, how big is it? It's Kedei She'yechois B'shtei Etzva'oisav. And U'ba'oif, Hakel if you got living cotton. That's the top. Now, let's go over Eze Makim HaShchita B'Kon. So, number one, let's go from the top again. He's going organized. Milmaila Lamata. Mishipui Koiva Ulamata. There's a Shipui Koiva. The windpipe, you should know, unlike the Veshet, not only is it like a tzipoiden, it's made up, you can push it, feel it. It's made up rings. The top ring is slanted, and he has a picture over there. Keva, no, that's not a good. We need another picture. Really, whoever learned Chulin, we have in the shul beautiful new svarim for Chulin. So the top ring is slanted, and it's covered with a cap of meat. So he's saying it's under that slanted ring. That's the limit of the top. When you go down, what's interesting, the way Hashem made it, is that the kana goes into the lungs. But hold on, it doesn't go into the top of the lungs. There's going to be what Chazal call the wings of the lungs. There's some part of the lungs that are a little bit above the point where the kana goes into the lungs. So ulamata ad roish knafareya. When the animal, especially when the animal extends its necks to the pasture, some part of the lungs, my friend, they go above the place where the kana goes into the lungs. You don't want to shecht it. If the kana is not in the lungs, it's the kana. No, you want to shecht it above the area that even when the lungs, which are a little bit above the kana, right, are like covering the kana, you want to shecht it above that. You understand? Good.
How big is the space?
Not so big. That's why you have to see it. And then we have good svarim here. Over the last 2 cycles of Daf Yomi, what they put out last 2 times 14 years ago by Chulin or whatever the time was. I forgot the name of the sefer. Huh? I don't know what we have it here. It was amazing. Mamash amazing. Anyways, guys, everyone is invited to Edo Cohen's house on the Elul Gimel, Elul 3. We're going to shach the animal and we're going to do all this with pleasure. Now, all of you're shechting it from the outside. That's what's called sabah. Halacha 8. Now, if the animal strained itself unusually and extended its neck a lot, or the shoichet, so what you did was you shechted it in the right location. But since the animal's neck was very extended, the veshet or the kana, you hit the wrong location. The outside was good, but the inside is bad. That's a machloikis. It's a suffix whether it's an avela or not. Okay, halacha 9. The beauty of today is when you shech today, they have the mechanical machine. The machines that they have are phenomenal. That's what's the name of the sefer. If you can just give it to me, I'll try to do maybe over the next 2 days. Whoever has this already in the house, they can definitely use it. And I'm going to try to find before the numbers of the pages. Sefer Tamunei Choyel, illuminated with a picture. We're going to see the real thing, but for people who can't come to our shchita, then for sure this is almost as good as the real thing. Okay, halacha 9. We're not speaking about up and down, guys. We already said the up and down. Be'emtzat tzavar means under the nose. and not from the side. Don't shecht lechatchila from the side, but if you shecht it from the, because what we want is for you to cut it even b'diavad roiv shnei simanim. If you cut straight, you're going to get that. If you cut from the side, you have to make more effort. You can miss one of them. Shchitase is kosher as long as you shechted, as we'll see the simanim. The kamu shira shchita ideally is both simanim, kana and the veshet. Hashchita hamu'ula is sheyachatchu shneim. You should cut both of them, not only by an animal, even by a bird. You should intend to do that, but you did your kavana, but you didn't end up cutting both of the simanim. So what's the din? If at least the roiv of any one or roiv of both by the animal post facto, you can argue. Think about it. If I shechted the entire, let's say, veshet, and exactly half of the kana, if I would add it up together, I have the majority of both simanim, but not in one. In one, I only did half. It's not good. In contrast, if you did at least ruba shalzeh, even if you only did, not like we learned yesterday or 2 days ago. Yesterday, right, the roiv, bittul b'roiv, we said is ratio 2-1. Here, roiv means what it normally means. It means 50.1. 50.1, not 51%. 50 with that little bit more. From both, by a behemoth. Roiv of both. Another chiddush. Halacha yudalef. Shochat chetzi shel zeh v'chetzi shel zeh. Afilo b'oiv shchitas psula. Even though by your oiv b'diavad roiv echad, here you did half and half. No, you need to have roiv. Another din, kana shoyach chetzi pasuk. If the kana was already exactly half ripped open, we're going to learn soon. That's okay. It doesn't. It's not a veshet is much worse. A hole in the veshet. In the kana, if the kana when the animal is still alive is half untorn, the animal is still kosher. It's not a treif. All you did was you added to the kana kachuta sa'ara. Whether you began in the incision and you went more, or you went from the side and you joined your addition to that which was in nature, that's good. And you just add a little bit because now the kana is right. The rule is after you shech, you have to be better the simanim. Whoever did kaparas, you'll see that if you have the coverage to look, or if you whatever that right after he does shchita, he sticks his thumb in and he makes both simanim protrude. That's what he has to do. You have to check to see how much you cut. The imlei badak, and it's too late because now the nechta charosh kadem sheivtak, you cut the head off. Hareizu nevela. Even if the sheikh is zosemar. Question is why? So the Rambam says in Allah Yud Gimel. I want you to know that many people mustama have the gersim with a shin. By us it says kol behema. It's shek kol behema. In other words, Allah Yud Gimel. Why? Why did you say the sheikh is such a good sheikh? You can say I always get it right. I didn't check. Why can't I have a chazaka that I did it right? No, because the chazaka halachically should kol behema b'chayeha. You don't have a shin, but the pshat is the same. An animal when it's alive, b'cheskas isur medes. There is a cheskas. You can't have the animal. Either it's not Eber Menachai. It's called the cheskas einosh chuta. There's a whole lumdus in yeshiva about that. Whatever you're going to call it, you can't eat it. So you have to halacha yudalit. Now let's move on to the next topic. Gavaldik. What could be used? Adobe. It's amazing, right? These pictures. Yumamish gavaldik. Bakoil. That's the answer. Anything. Bein b'sakin shel mateches, which is what we use nowadays. Bein b'tzoyer, right? I know that the Torah speaks about that by a bris milah. So it means a flint, a stone, a sharp stone, or with glass, or with karemia shel kano agam. You remove a reed. They say a paper cut. It doesn't matter what you're using. As long that's what we want. You want for the edge to be sharp, not sharp the way you think sharp meaning there should not be a pigima. We're going to learn soon, if there's no pigima, even if it's not that sharp and you need the whole day to cut through, that's not a problem. Chad means there should be no nick protruding out or in. No serration. Very good. Avalam hoya kamoi telem bechudoi shel dava shesheich boy. There's even only a spike. I feel like I'm cutting beyoyse shchitase psula. One part of the trainings of a sheichet is to do the bedikas we're going to learn today. Allah tezvav. Hoya hatelem miruach achas. Lo yishchad ba. So the Rambam says like this. So sometimes there are certain nicks that they don't go straight up. If here's the knife, the nick goes up in a direction that if you're going against it, something gets chapped. If you're going in the opposite direction, it won't do anything. Lechatchila, don't use it. But if you used it and you went only in that direction, and we're going to speak about the moilech umevi, that moilech umevi, which is what the sheikh does, is not ma'akev. If you manage to cut through even the roiv, which is good enough, or even better, both simanim in one direction because your knife was as long as the golos, you're good. We'll see it here in a moment. So don't use a knife that if you go in the opposite direction, you're going to go over the pigima. But if you did it, shchitas ksheda. Halacha tezayin ketzah. Sakin shetibadek behoylacha. Hoylacha means, as we're going to learn about making a bedikas with my stupid phone. So really, you have to make six bedikas. Six bedikas is that we view a blade as having the top, the chudoi, and then there is the right and the left. So you're going to we use the nail. The Rambam is going to speak about using the basar and your nail, because really, if you use your basar today, you have a surgeon there because you're going to need him right away. But they used to use their tongue. How they did it, I have no idea. Because since, like we said, the veshet is basar, that's the logic. And the kana is like a nail. So Chazal always spoke about making a bedika, that there's no pegimas on your basar and on your nail. But let's speak about what we do now when you make a bedika using the nail. Moilech umevi is that you're going in both directions. Because if you go in one direction and you don't feel even a nick, it doesn't mean that if you go in the opposite direction, because maybe the nick is slanted. But that's, you do it on the chud, on the tip, on the top. And then you put your hand a little bit to the right. Moilech umevi. And a little bit to the left. If you would magnify the blade, we're making believe as if the blade has three sides: the right side, the left side, and the top. Verstehst? Okay, so yes. This is explaining halacha to the Bible. When you came back, you felt a pegam. Really, you shouldn't have used it. But because you did, it's not about the knife should not have a pegam. That the pegam should not be that which cuts through the neck of the animal, as we're going to learn. God willing, Shabbos, Pei Gimel, about the 5 basic rules that if you don't know that, you're not qualified to be a sheichet. We're going to learn about those details. Now, halacha yud zayin. What about a curved knife? As long as there's not a pegam, then you can shach l'chatchila. Say, like a menorah. Right, a menorah that's not on the same level. L'chatchila, don't use it. But the evidence, okay. But by a sakin shel shchita, I don't care if it's curved. The sakin should be a cholak. You see, cholak, that's the word. Cholak doesn't mean sharp. English. Cholak means smooth. It has to be smooth. It doesn't have to be sharp. Today, the knives are geferlich sharp. Today, knives have a chaver that cut off his nose, and he didn't know about it. Like mamash, it's very dangerous because, again, the metals got better. It's amazing how the knives are today. But as long as it's smooth, but the ein chadots and sharp, doesn't matter. But all we want is there should not be a pegima. Hoyel the ein ba pegam, sheichten ba. Even though it's going to take you the ganze day. And by the way, the animal, you see from the animal is not going to freak out. When you shecht, just on mitzias, when you shecht an animal, I know the animal prior knows it's being geschachten. Sometimes they cry, but the act of the shechita, the animal doesn't make a noise of tzar. It's a fact what we can observe. And even if you're going the whole day there in the neck, right? Halacha yudches. The sakin chadash chasam. So what happens when you wet the knife? Hadei eino halak. It's not completely smooth while it's wet. Ela magor kamagaresh shiboilos. Shumistabich beetzbam. That's not called a pegam. The type of that type of not smooth because of it, the moisture. That's okay. It's no pegam. There's no nick. There's no. It's all leveled. Halacha yutes. Hatoilish kana. If you uproot a reed, or if you pull out a tooth, or if you cut that sword, if you cut a take a rock, or you use a nail, all of these things, and they are in their natural state, they are already chaden. However, but if you stuck them into the ground, but if you shechted, it's kosher. We're going to get in a moment more details about that. We're going to learn about drasa. We're going to speak up more about why can't you use it when it's stuck in. But the evidence, okay.
Rabbi Yud Ches,
Yes.
knife that has been wetted, the pshat wetted over there doesn't mean from water. It means sharpened. That's not, wetted is spelled differently.
Okay, I take back. Halacha Yud Ches, the point Halacha Yud Ches is that there's a madrega that's in between smooth and pegam. That's Halacha Yud Ches. Not wetted with water. Okay, I stand corrected, but it's not a pegam. The pegam is what's bad. But if it's a little bit not smooth, not pegam, you have to know how to put that. That's okay. Thank you, Osama. Now we're
It's
back
sharp,
to
but it's not smooth. It's sharp, but it's not smooth. It was sharpened, but it wasn't yet. There's different. You polish, you make it smoother. You
okay,
sharpen
very good,
it.
very good.
There's different
But the
madregas.
point is, it's not pogum. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Halacha chav. Shachad bohem kishem mechobarim. But now, halacha you test b'diavad is now you made it mechobar. But if you took something in their natural chibur state, then shchitas psulam, even though there's no pigam. Halacha chafal. Lokach lechi abahema. You take a jaw of an animal, guys. The animal was already geshachted. So now you have the head in your hand, and there are teeth, and the teeth are sharp. Problem is that in between one tooth and the other, shchitas psula, but because it's like a sickle, you understand? In between the teeth. But if you only used one tooth, I know because you took off the whole jaw. It's not called mechubar. Halacha chabeis liben asaken ba'ur, and you shechted it. What's the question? The question is if the knife is very hot and you put it on the neck of the animal, so it's going to burn through the neck of the animal. So that was that whole sugi in the Gemara. Do we say that it's going to burn prior to cutting? Then the animal will be in a vela because you didn't shecht it. Or do you say no, that the sharpness will get to the simanim prior to the heat, which is what we paskin ksheidam. Sakin should see the echad mago. One side is jagged, the other side is good. Don't use it lachatchila gezeda. You might use the other side. By the way, nowadays, what do we use double-sided? I think only a sakin shel mila. Sakin shel shchita by yos b'chlal. You can't use both sides. But if you have a knife, one side and the other side. Don't, two sides, this side and that side. Don't use it. But if you use it, like we spoke up before, there are really 6 vidikas. It's hoilacha and hoiva on the top, hoilacha and hoiva on this, hoilacha and hoiva on that. First, you use the basar. The basar is rach, like the veshet is rach. And you do it, also al tziparnoi. The tziplainen is mamish like the kanen. And on each one, shehein piyah, the top, first the top, and then on one side and then the other side to make sure that there's no pegam. And the way we are trained is that you put your thumb, whether you're going to use your index nail or your middle finger nail, when you kvetch, when you put your thumb on it, that's the way we're taught to do it. It becomes the most sensitive. You pick up, and any person in a very small amount of time will develop a chush like you don't even know that you have, of picking up how you can pick up a pigima. It's fascinating. That if you never did it before and they'll give you a knife, you're going to think it's mamash smooth. You should be careful with the knife not to cut through your nail and your finger. But after a little bit, and when they test you, so they don't let you see what they're doing to the knife, they give it a little touch. They make a pigima, they touch it with some keli, and then they ask you how many pigimas does it have. That's one of the steps you have to do to become a sheikh. Okay. Halacha chavdal. Another gavaldik rule. After every shchita, you got to make a bedikah. Why? Because if you find the pegam afterwards, there are two things. One thing is, it only got the pegam. Let's go to a kaparas today. So you only have to cut through b'diavad roiv siman echad. It could be that in the animal's neck or in the skin on the other side, there was a shtickle pebble, and it's going to be pogum the knife. Could be the knife only became pogum after the shechita was already kosher, and it's good. Could be that there was something dirty inside the hair or the skin prior to going through the minimum, and that was pogum the knife. You don't know that. So first of all, even that will be safek nevela. But going further, vaday nevela. Hadez a safek nevela. Shema bo'oid nifkama prior to the shechita. Uksheshachat asimanam b'sakam pegum hashachat. And therefore, hashachat emes rabois or efes rabois. Really, the ideal is to make a bedika ben achos ne'achos. You know what you're doing, guys? You cannot save the one that you shechted. And if you shecht an animal and right afterwards you make a bedika and the second is peguma, safek nevela. But you know what you did? You made sure that the next animal is going to be kosher. If you didn't do that, imagine a person shechted 10 behemoths. They're expensive behemoths. And then he makes a bedika at the end. You have to be chayish that all the 10. And even the first one. And you did not do the bedika. You didn't do that. And then you know what caused the pegima. You broke wood, and then you make a bedika. We can say shchita keshera. See, it's very amazing. What did we learn before? That every animal b'chaya, b'cheska she'en shchuta. If you don't check the simanim, it's not good. Here you check the simanim. Elamad, to check the knife. But now you can explain why does the knife have a pegima? Because I know that I hit the knife on a piece of wood. Here you can say it's kshera. Shecheskas hasakin. No, because the animal is becheskas, not kosher. So when you're checking the simanim, you're checking the behemoth. The behemoth is becheskas, not kosher. The sakin was checked before at some point. So the knife is becheskas kshera. And now I can blame it's like by the maras. If you find a mara, but there's a wound, you can say, I know why it's pogum, because I hit the table by accident. Shecheskas hasakin shenivkam abadavar hakosher sheshibur. Gaval. And now you lost the knife. Actually, you can also the knife. If the question is on the knife has a cheskas kash. You get it? Good. When a chacham comes, you show the chacham your knife. But if you don't do that, if you never gave anyone else to be mashgiach over your knife and you shecht it for yourself, so afterwards check the knife. If you find the knife, you have a beduka. So the meat is good, but we don't want people to do that. So what do? We put him into a nidui for a certain limited amount of time. We don't want him to rely on himself. But if you, after he shuts and he never gave everyone to his knife, and you discovered that the knife was peguma, then you get him. Then it says peguma mavira noisim. Not only that, and you announce all the meat of this guy is treifa.
Shouldn't be shechting by yourself.
No one shechts. Well, people do that today. But whenever a chacham comes, you show him the knife. Anyway, it's very normal when a Rav who knows Shechita comes to a town. I remember people, they show him the knives. You always ask, you check my knife. How long does the knife have to be? That's why we spoke about a tooth of an animal. Doesn't matter. But it should not be overly thin. Overly thin will pierce and not shech. Like this, like the head of a blade. That's not good. When do you shecht? If there's light. In other words, there's nothing inherently wrong with that night, but you have to have not a candle, you have to have an avuka for you to see what you're doing. Now, if you shecht it in the dark and it turns out that you did okay, it's okay. Today, with electricity, anytime. Allah, final Allah. Or if you shecht on Shabbos, he's saying b'shoigig because if you're machal Shabbos befaresya, we're going to learn that a goy that shechts nevela, even though you don't need to have kavana, but here was b'shoigig. His shchita is ketsheda, but when can you eat it? Like when a yid cooks on Shabbos, you cannot eat it on Shabbos. You can only eat it after Shabbos, after Yom Kippur. Final today's Pedic base. It's a bit late, but we're going to get there. Pedic base has 22 halachas. It's relatively not a big Pedic. Now, we're going to learn about the place of shchita, as we'll see, chutz l'makim ha'azara. We're going to speak about the ikir, the kavana, how to shecht. Kavana, amazing concept. You don't need kavana, misasek is good, but negative kavana is bad. And that's a cloud throughout all of the halachas on the Torah. Just because certain things don't need to have kavana, but it doesn't mean that we don't care about your kavana. It means it doesn't need kavana. But if someone had kavana l'sheim avodah zara, that will invalidate the shchita. And a lot more chavra pedic base halacha aleph chol makim mutar lishchait. We're not speaking about on the neck of the animal. We're speaking about where would you shech, but chutz minu azara. Chulin ba'azara. She'ein shechten ba'azara ela kachim mizbeach bilvad. Aval ha'chulin asal l'shachar ba'azara. That's beim b'cha beima. You can argue there are no korbanos from chayas. So maybe a chaya, yeah, doesn't matter. Behema, chaya, ben boif. Then all this week's parsha. And v'chalta b'shorecha. Halamalot Hashem shechtem b'sar taiva elo chutz l'makam asher lachar Hashem. Halacha beis v'zeh shenishchat chutz l'makam hu shemut l'achar b'chal ha'sharim. But what happens if a guy violated and he shechted chulin b'azara, even though that basar is ritually pure? Nevertheless, v'asur b'hana'a. Listen, here's not asur b'achila. Asur b'hana'a ki basar b'chal v'chayotze b'y. Wow. And therefore, when something is asur b'hana'a v'koyvin anoisa, you got to bury it. And if you burnt it, you got to bury the ashes. Even if you shecht in l'refuah, we're on the place in the Bakam Azara. Today, Hayom Hazeh, prior to the building of the Beis HaMikdash, we're lachilas goyim, ulachal kalavim. That is asur b'hana'a. Now, Aval, however, in contrast, Hanoicher b'Azara nechira means you ripped the head off, or Hama'akar, you pulled out the samanim, or v'goy sheshachat, which means garnish for a yid. V'ashoicha, the Dinim says treifa, which means the shechita was not kosher, or v'ashoicha ben Rav Oif. Hatmeim, not tohirim. There, you can't eat it, but the asur b'hana'a doesn't apply. Allah Gimel.
There's not a lav. Not a lav. It's just you can't do it.
That's right. It's inferred. It's inferred ki yirchak. Very good. You know, you're not going to get malchus, but it's asur b'hana'a. Wow. The loy behem b'chay b'vad elo kol chulam b'chlal asur lachnisan la'azara. The whole question is, can kohanim bring in spices? That's chulin. That many people say they could, but that's not food. That's the spice of the food that they're eating. In other words, you know what they ate? They ate meat. The kohanim. But if you brought them in, as they were before. Like where do you know it's asur b'hana'a? And the difference, if it's tameya, it's a mutter asur b'achila, of course, but it's a mutter b'hana'a. Even though you're not going to be chayv malchus midaraisa, you're going to get malchus mardus. Halacha dal. If a guy says behema zu shlamim uvelad chulin, now you got a problem. You're magdish the animal. Here's Dovi. If I'm going to shech this animal, what did we learn in the past segment? Machalas asuras ben pekua. Before the rabbanan that if it walks on the ground, you have to shecht it. When you shecht the mother, it's matter the child. Now I got a problem because I said that the child will remain chulin. The shechit of the mother is going to be matter the child. Is that child now chulin bazar? That's different because lefisha great. Halacha 5. Ain't shechten l'toich yamon haris. Guys, you can't shech directly into waters, because that's the way the goyim would serve their deities. Shema yoimru oivet mayim uzeh. And it looks like you're makriv lamayim. Till today, I know in Rio, and they have these time, everyone goes, they throw up some flour into the ocean. These are old Avodah Zarah practices. The oivet, the sar shal yam, who was kegar zan the yad ha'chotz. So don't shech directly into the water. Another thing, you can't shecht it into a bucket of water. People try to do that, just it shouldn't be messy. Why not? Because how funny. You look into the water, you see a reflection. You see your reflection. So these guys, these pagans, they would shecht to the reflection. No one should be chayish. Another thing, because that's that. And you should know that's the messiness of a shlachtos. People, the pita people that are trying to make tzaras for us, it looks messy. It looks messy because we're pasha shechting on the floor, and there's a lot of blood. And if you would shecht it in a guma, it would be a lot more contained. It has nothing to do with the animals, not with the mess. Allah is above. But if you have waters that are murky, that means you can't look and see your reflection. That's not a problem, because it's only a chashash. Even though you shechted so close to the pit that right after the shechita, the dam is yeded laguma, that's okay. Ubashuk lo yasikin, but don't do that in public because people are going to think shema yechaka saminim. They're going to think that you're mimicking the goyim. The goyim would shecht only in pits. Bashuk also leachal mishchitasi because maybe he's a min. And again, as we'll learn, who is allowed to shecht anyone but not goyim. And here, if a guy is nabach oivad avodah zarah, then sometimes he can have a din like a non-yid. Umuter lishchait. Now, what about you're in a boat? So you can't shecht on the yamim. So hello. So imagine you're on a little rowboat. The Jew, not a kosher sandwich. He's going to make a shchita. The neighbor guy is going to have his sandals in blood. So what he does is he puts the animal's neck over the wall, but he makes sure that the blood doesn't go directly in the water, like not directly in the pit. He puts it on the doifen. Al doifen asfina. And even though hadam shoises al doifen, you're good. Al gabe hakelim. Al gabe hakelim means on the outer surfaces of kelim, but not inside kelim. Let's go back to Allah Zayin. See, it's mamish who, what, when, and where. The Seder is phenomenal. How do you shech? How do you shech? Today, the animal is going. Machines will put the animal in the right position, which is so much easier. Then it was Yena Maisa. How do you get the animal in a position? My grandfather, who was a sheikhet, if the Rebbe told him to be a sheikhet, has horror stories. How some people in the shlachtais, they didn't like, he was a stranger, mit a yid, mit a bard, mit a hat, I don't know how he shechted. He was very, very stubborn and is not going an inch off. He told me sometimes right before he shechted, they would let the animal go.
Yeah, I remember Asher, when he became Shepherd, he had a picture. He just kind of cut inside.
Yeah, because once the animal is positioned with the bars, yeah, we're not supposed to show on our necks. I forgot who. Some Sefer, before they learned Chulin, they fasted because the only way to teach is you end up showing on yourself. So it shouldn't. But for teaching, you do whatever you need to do, and then your fast should not have. Yeah, they put bars, one bar under the neck, and the animal is trapped. I'm a chaya. But what do you do then? You extend the neck. You make a movement of back and forth. The key would be we're going to learn again Shabbos, Drasa, you can't press down. You can't press down. You are pressing down. You're not going direct down. You have to constantly be moving. And as long as you don't stop, you can go the whole day. Doesn't make a difference whether the animal is ravutza. It means it's crouching down, whether the animal is standing. You chop the neck. No, you don't want the neck to move. That's what, yeah, it's much harder that way. And v'shachad. Let me tell you like this. As we'll see soon, the biggest problem of shachting milmata is that drasa, one of the 5 main dinim, is you can't press it down directly. If the weight of the animal is going on the knife, that could cause, not from you, from the weight. But then that's why you chop the neck, so you know the animal is not weighing down, and you're going milmata l'mayla. Halacha ches. Not as a sakin b'koisu. So even though we learned in the previous chapter that if something is naturally in a fixed state, it may not be used. But we also learned that once something is detached, we learned in the last chapter, and then you stick it into the wall. The hever atzaver alach nishchat shchita sekishera. But there, that's only if you put the neck underneath. So there's no gravity weighing down. But when you have that, you're not even touching the knife. So when you're holding the knife, shuki previously, you'll feel if the animal put the neck down. Here, you're not touching the knife. The weight of the animal might go down, and there'll be some cut without the movement. That's not a shchita. That's called derasa, as we'll learn, God willing, in Perek. I think it's the next chapter, Perek Shlishi. But that's only by an animal who has a lot of weight. But if it's a bird, if you stick the knife in the wall, that's the way you're shechting. That's going to be okay. If you only go in one direction, going away from you, or if you're only going in a movement close to you, the bottom line is, if you fulfilled all of the steps, all of the 5 rules that we'll learn in the next chapter, it's good, it's kosher. On the if you kept on going until you cut the whole neck off, also ksheda. Unlike, let's say, in kachim, where the Torah says by certain karbanis that don't v'lo yavdil, not by here. Hoylech v'lo hevi v'lo hoylech. V'hititz esarosh v'lochem v'vad. So what's the problem? The problem is that how did you cut so much with moving so little? Maybe you did the rasa. So here we have to see whether it was shayit. If the length of the knife is like the width of 2 necks, so going in one movement will be like going and coming. But the imla, for sure there was the rasa. Another din shachat shnei rashim ke'echad. Even if the oira chasakin is not that long, you're going straight. 2 people are holding a knife. even if one guy on one side, one guy on the other side. Afilu echad mitzad sheni, v'sheni mitzad echad kenegdoi. So they're going back and forth. Shchitas k'sheira. V'chein shnayim shachazu shnei tzakinim. Two people are holding two knives. V'shachtam ke'echad v'shnei mekaymes b'tzavar. It's the way they interpret this Rambam. It's on two sides of the same siman on the same height. So you're cutting through the Veshit. One guy is cutting on this side. One guy is from the same height cutting on the other side. And when they touch, now you have at least the roiv. That's okay. That's what he means over here. Or one guy's only cutting the Veshit. The other guy's only cutting the kana. There doesn't even have to be on the same goiva. Here in the second case, each one is cutting another siman, even if it's not, as long as it is within the limits that we learned in the previous chapter. It's okay. Kumus means a slant. It's make like a comb, slanted back and forth. It's also going to be okay. Unlike kachim. When it comes to chulin, you don't have to have kavanah, which means even if you shecht it aimlessly or jokingly, or you threw a knife, you had no idea you're playing that goyish game, darts. Happened to be you're throwing a knife. Happened to be that when you threw it, a bird came, boom, and it cut through. Good. And we just, you don't need moil chumevin. So then, who did we learn in the Gemara? There was a hunter. I forgot his name. He would hunt, and the arrows. No. The Gemara speaks about a hunter that he would shech that way. That's not nesasik. That was an amazing koyach of hunting that he got the knife not to pierce it, to cut it b'hoylacha. But here you didn't think about shechita. It's good. So in other words, you don't need kavanah, even though the remaining of the chapter will be a negative kavanah will be bad. But since you don't need kavanah, now chedesh oishato oikoten or shikoy shenis babel odatoi, or someone who was a mental illness sheshachatu. As long as other people saw that a shchita was kitikona, then harezok sheira. Gavaldik avol sakon shenaflu v'shachta. But if a knife fell, in other words, you know what you need? Koyach adam. You need koyach adam. Afal pitch shachta kedar karezok psula. There's you shecht. There's avach to. Adam also will see me zayid. But here, gravity cut it, which is not good. If you have a wheel, whether it's made out of stone, whether it's made out of wood, and you have a knife that's affixed to the wheel, and Adam is turning the wheel, and then someone sticks out the neck of a bird or of a behemoth, you know why? Because the knife was moving the koyach Adam. However, if water is turning the wheel, and you put the neck there, but then shchita was not done with your koyach, there's no koyach adam. In contrast, if what the water that is turning the wheel was not going there was some sort of blockage, and you got the water there, so the first movement, however you define that, that's called koyach adam. The im patar adam asamayim achabo v'sivus hagalgal, and now b'shakol b'sviva said it's kshera shedemi koyach adam ba. But only the first turn of the wheel should be koyach adam. But the moment now that the water was there, so it's not good. Now halacha yudala, they're speaking now about negative kavan. Hashoichet l'shem harim, for the sake of mountains, l'shem gavois, l'shem yamin, l'shem laharis, l'shem idbarais. Even though he's not doing it to serve them as an idol, but he's only doing it as this superstition l'refuah. So it's not, there's no shematz avodah zara, but that's called a negative kavan. It's l'shem harim. Boom. Shchitos ipsula. Avalam shachat l'shem mazal hayam, my mazal lahar, or like a mazal's gates of him. Then not only is the shchita pasul, now you got an issue of avodah zara, and therefore asur bana. And like we said, we just learned recently, and if you sell it, even the money you make is also asur bana. Halacha tezvav. Hashech l'sabehem alizak damal avodah zara. Or lahakter chebel avodah zara. Oichet areizu asura. Shalamedim machshava b'chutz b'chulim b'machshava zakotchem b'fnim. Shamachshava kizu paiselas b'hem. As we learn in Hilchos Mikdash. Now, halacha tazay. You shechted it now. Then you had a machshava avodah zara or lahakter chavel avodah zara. We say harizu asura misafek was when you shechted it, you had no kavanah. The negative kavanah later could be magale. That's really what you had in mind. Maybe. Shema now, next case. Halacha Yud Zayin. Let me explain something. We're going to learn this by kachin. By kachin, you have to first be magdish the animal. Now, of course, shechting kachin bachutz is problematic on its own. This is not shechting kachin bachutz. You are not magdish the animal prior to the shechita. When you're shechting it, you're doing it to kachin that you could have first been magdish. That's called marasayin. The issue is marasayin. That's pshatim. Shchitase pesulam shezeh. You see with the chafadim and shoichet kachem achutz. Shachal l'shem kachem sheinu boyim v'nedem v'nedava. Not only you are not magdish it, you shechted it l'shem chatos. You can't be minadeh for chatos if you're not chayv chatos. Then shchitase sheinu. Then there's not even a marasayin. Halacha yudches. Keita. Shoichet l'shem oilam. Something that you can give as an adava, or l'shem shlamim, or l'shem toida, or l'shem pesach. Shchitase pesula. Choyel I 1 second. Pesach is a choyel. No. Choyel va Pesach mafresh oisib b'chalashanim b'chalash yirtza. And actually, we're going to learn later that if you shechta Pesach shaloi b'zmanoi has a din of a shlamim. Shlamim is in the category of neder and nadav. Shach l'shem chatos in contrast l'shem Hashem vaday or Hashem taloi l'shem chol l'shemais l'shem tumura. There's not even a matter of sign. Shchitas kisheino halacha yutes. But if the guy was with chatos and when he shechs he says lechatasi. Oh, guys, normally you say, Arezu chatos. Now you are magdish. Now, God forbid, kachem achutz. You didn't do that here. But you are chayev achatos. Now, shchitos b'sulam. Now goes even more. This is going to be a case where it actually became holy. If a person had a carbon in their house, and when they shechted, they said, this is tumura zivchi. Here, the Rambam writes, shchitos b'sulam sharei heimer boy. That's called tumura mamish. This is shchita kachem achutz mamish. Halacha chav. Ba'isha. And she says, Zule oilasi. Here, the only issue might be marasayin. She's chayiv. And we said when a guy brings a chatos, so he says, She'ein oilas yoledes b'amenad v'nadava. And therefore, eino yoledes. No, she's not a yoledes. She is chayiv ba'oila. Maybe she had a nafel. Ve'ein choshen shamei pila. It's all not a sign because people would have known about it. That's the side here at least. Even though this person is not a nazir, since nazir is in the general category of nedava is nedarim, so that's not a sign. Then it's a problem. Like very good. Like we learned, two people are holding on to it. One person had an one guy had a negative kavanah, but the other one didn't have kavanah. Or he had kavanah, a good kavanah. You know what? It parcels it. Guys, we're going to learn, if you shecht one after the other, if there is no shehiyah, that means that one guy continues right. There is no stop, which is okay. Here also, one of them had a kavanah, negative kavanah, parcel. If he had some ownership in it, there's another general rule. Final Allah in today's chapter. Halacha chav beis Yisrael sheshachat le'nachli. He slaughtered for a goy, even though the goy had a kavanah for whatever the goy wanted. The fact is, the shoichet's kavanah, negative kavanah, is the only kavanah that could possible. And now in the reverse, if a goy shechted for a yid, even if the goy is a cotton, as we will see, the only one that cannot shecht is a goy, shchitas and avela. Even though we just learned that ein adam oisad avashen shaloi, shkoyach, ein adam shaloi was his machshava. Here, the shoichet, the fact the shoichet was a goy, and that will make the animal as if it wasn't slaughtered. Even though the goy is a cotton, it's not do a das. Very good. We're going to learn that the goy's shchita is nevela, nekuda. Even though it's davar she'ein shaloi, if someone killed my animal without shchita, my animal is nevela. Someone made my animal treifa. It's a fact. It became a nevela. It became a treifa. Guys, it's like a Perek Gimel that we're going to learn the 5 foundational rules that are ma'akev for shchita to be continued. All right, Yidden.
Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos, guys. Shabbos, we're learning 5 to